Hi guys, and welcome to the channel. Now, this will be the final video of our Soviet light tank BT-7 by Zvezda in the 1/35th scale. This will be the weathering and final reveal on this little project. So let's go ahead and get into it. So these are the products I'll be using. I may even use some dry pigments too later on in the video, but we'll get to those in a bit. First off, we're going to use this Vallejo thick mud. This is a acrylic product. It's water-based. So I have a thick stippling brush here for applying our acrylic mud. And we've got some water. And I've also got a toothpick for stuffing it in areas that are hard to reach with a brush. And also, of course, a paper towel. So I found that it's easier to use if I go ahead and wet the brush first and then I dip it into the pigment. Well, not pigment, but acrylic mud. So we're just going to put it on lightly here. It's going to give us some base texture for our other weathering effects. So what I'm thinking about is to do this vehicle with a light muddy effect. Not real heavy, but of course we're going to have some mud that's going to accumulate in certain areas. So I'm kind of concentrating on these suspension components here and any area where the mud's going to accumulate. So it does help to clean the brush every now and then. This being an acrylic based, water-based paste. It's going to try to dry in your brush, so I clean the brush often. That's what the water's for. So we just want to get it in where these accumulations are going to be. So as the tracks go around, of course, it's going to throw mud just about everywhere. You can get up underneath the fenders and around these steering components here. I'm going to do the underside of these fenders as well. Now most of this can't be seen, but it helps to have it there just in case. Now I'm using a Q-tip here, as you just saw. If you get this acrylic mud someplace where you don't want it, or if it's too thick, you need to go ahead and wipe it off with a little bit of water and a Q-tip or something. Because once it dries, it gets hard as concrete. So the only other way to get it off is to sand it off or to trim it off with a hobby knife or something. So if you get it someplace you don't want it to, you need to go ahead and take care of it right away. So we're doing the bottom and the back of the vehicle here, just some light texturing. And that'll give a more dimensional look to our mud. Now you can do as much or as little as you like. Just, it's totally up to you. So we don't want to forget about our running gear. So here we're going to do the road wheels. Now the mud's going to collect down next to the rim. Seeing how these road wheels are really a flat vertical surface, any mud that gets splashed up on it is going to get slung down towards the rim. And you can see here I am doing a little bit of cleanup. There's a little bit more there than what I want it to have, so we'll just clean that up a little bit. You don't want to forget your drive sprocket either. Out of all the components, probably the drive sprocket is going to collect the most. And just cleaning it up off the edge of the rim, because mud's not going to stay there. It looks pretty good. So after we get that acrylic on, we're going to use this fresh mud. Now this is an enamel-based product. This one is very dark, So I'm just going to go in and put it right on the bottom edges. And what happens with mud, as it gets sprayed and distributed all over the side of the vehicle, it's going to kind of sag down towards the bottom. So thicker areas of mud will be on the lower portion of the vehicle, and wherever the mud's the thickest is where it's going to be the darkest, because it's going to retain much more water. And so, staying with that same theme, we're going to use it on all of our running gear. Here we're going to do just right around the rim on the inside there of the drive sprocket, and cleaning up any excess. Now if you let this dry, you'll have to use enamel thinner to clean it up. So I always take it off right away. And we'll do our idler too, making sure that we clean up any little bit that came around that we don't want on there. And we're going to do the road wheels. Remember, whatever you do to one part of the vehicle, kind of stick with that theme, because it's all about layering, and we want it to be consistent. So next up is dark mud, and we're going to come in right above our fresh mud. So this is a lighter color, and it's going to help with that transition look. Now don't worry about that dark separating line there between the two colors. We're going to blend that later. So we're just coming in above our fresh mud and putting this next lighter color on. Same thing with the wheels, same concept. As wheels go around, you know, everything gets slung out, so it should be lighter towards the center and darker towards the rim. And now we're going to use our Earth Effects, which is the lightest from AK. And we're coming in above our dark mud. And just kind of get it in there for it. So we got this three-tone look going on, but don't worry about that. We just want to make sure we get the pigments on so that we can work with it later. So we also are going to do it on the inside edges of the fenders here. And we go to the center of our wheels. So you can see we have a real hard line between the different shades. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take this enamel thinner and an old brush that you really don't care a lot about. And it's just lightly dampened. And depending upon how dry these enamel weathering products are is going to depend upon how much thinner you need to use. You just kind of feel your way through that part. And we're going to first blend the dark and the medium color, and then we're going to come back and we're going to blend out that hard line between the lighter and the medium. And we don't want to forget our road wheels and our drive sprockets and idlers. We're going to blend those too. So next up, we're going to work on our tracks. We're going to use this brown iron oxide, old rust, and rust. So I have my track rusting box with my pigments. So those 3 different pigments are in the different corners of my box. I start off with a dark color and then intermittent with the next lightest color. Now you don't want to cover up everything that you did previously because we're trying to provide a little bit of color contrast. Most of which, when we coat these, we're going to coat these with a acrylic flat clear so that the pigments don't come off. Keep in mind that that's going to darken everything. You can use a pigment fixer, but in this particular case, since we're going to be putting some acrylic or some enamel mud over top of it in our weathering, we're going to not worry too much about that. So you just stipple it on. And it sticks real good to the enamel, or not enamel, but the acrylic paints. So I do seal these tracks so that all of our pigments doesn't come off. And like I say, it's going to darken it. So our next step after that dries is to go ahead and assemble our tracks onto the vehicle. So I got to put my drive sprocket in first. And then we'll align our road wheels. And I'm putting the tracks on now because we're going to start doing a final wash. And when we do that, I kind of want everything to be assembled so that it all has a unison look to it. It's easier to compare the different depths and thicknesses of your washes if everything's together. So once we get the wheels on, the 2 center road wheels have these caps that we have to glue on, so I'll have to glue that on. So our tracks are kind of not quite touching. They should be touching the 2 center road wheels. So I take my dollar store car wash sponge, which I've cut these little squares out of, and I kind of stuff that sponge in there to push the track down on top of the road wheels. And that'll make sure that we got the right sag. Could have done a better job with the shot, couldn't I? so I'm just going to use, to me, extra thin here because we're kind of gluing acrylic to acrylic, and I think it's going to be strong enough. If you have any worries about it, you can use some CA glue. So next up, we're going to use this flat steel enamel by Testers. I'm doing this while the tracks are drying. The glue drying on the tracks. We're just going to use this flat steel here to bring out a little bit of edge detail on our jacks. Seeing how these jacks get used a lot, any corners or edges will be scraped off, so there shouldn't be any paint there. And we're going to come in and also put it on our coaxial machine gun. A little bit of light dry brushing. Just make sure that you unload the brush as much as you can. You should have to work to get the pigments off the brush onto the part. Otherwise, you're going to be putting it on too thick. So now I'm going to take this Vallejo pigment here, and this will be the center color, which is Old Rust. And it's a dry pigment, but I'm going to use water as a carrier for this. And what we're doing is we're mixing up a little light rust filter. So it's thin. And we're just going to paint it on over top of the shovel. There's going to be light rust that collects on these pioneering tools. And also I decided to go ahead and use that and put it over the screen that's over top of our engine louvers, just to give us a little bit of variation. You can imagine that these screens probably got scratched up quite a bit and then rust collects on them. And I do go back and put a little bit of rust. I'm using a little bit darker color here, the ochre, just on our spare track sections. Now we're going to be using the Earth Effects. We're going to make us up a wash. This will be a light wash. It's an enamel based product, so we're going to use thinner, just enamel thinner, to thin it out. So I'm thinning it about 50-50. Even though AK says that it's a wash, it's actually kind of thick. So if you're blending it, then you can use it straight out of the bottle like we did on our road wheels and on the side of the lower hull. But if you're going to use it as a light wash, you need to thin it out. So I'm just putting some pigments on the bottom of the vehicle so that it's not all green. And it spreads out pretty good. And I am going to use a little bit of this dark mud here just to add a little contrast on the bottom of the hull. Not that anybody's ever going to see it, but I just decided I'd give it a shot and kind of see what it looks like. So we go back to the Earth Effects, which is the lighter colored wash, and mix more up, 50-50. And we're just putting a light wash to kind of blend in our mud effects here on our road wheels and our center hubs. And it looks thick here, but once the thinner dries off of it, you'll see that you may have to come back and put another coat. I do end up putting 2 coats on this. And we're going to do our tracks too. So just put that mud wash all over the tracks. Tracks, the tires on the road wheels, the center of the road wheels. Now this is what I was referring to, the reason why we go ahead and put our tracks on right away before we finish our washes, is so that we can get a good look at how everything plays from the top of the vehicle to the bottom of the vehicle. So we're just adding pigment now with the same thin wash to the top side of the vehicle. So we're going to get our horizontal and vertical surfaces. The important thing here is that we get some pigments on there so that we've got something to work with a little bit later. And so this is thin enough so that when we dab it on, it'll just kind of thin out. It'll run across the surface for us. We want to make sure that we got enough pigment to work with. But that's okay if you don't, because you can always come back and add more. And we don't want to forget our turret. And I'm going to put it on top of these hatches too. Now these hatches are white. I think that was for aerial recognition. But they are going to be dirty as well. And make sure we get it on the side. So this is the vertical surfaces as well. Want to make sure that we have pigments there. Same on the lower hull, all vertical surfaces need to have some pigment. So now we take a clean brush, and it's lightly dampened with enamel thinner. So on vertical and slanted surfaces, we're going to want to streak that. So that'll be in the direction that water's going to run off. A little bit of streaking here, a little bit of streaking there. So, just do it to your taste. And in effect, what we're doing is we're actually removing pigment. That's why we want to make sure that we get enough on there, so that when we start our streaking and our blending, that we have enough to work with. And we're just kind of blending over it with a stippling motion on our horizontal surfaces, because it doesn't really run off there. It sits there and kind of dries. I'll get a little closer shot here so you can see what I'm doing. So a frayed brush works pretty good because it leaves a lot of bristle tracks. Bristle tracks. Yeah, it sounds good. That way we have our streaks and watermarks running through our mud. So you can see here on our vertical surfaces, we want to keep our streaks running vertical, up and down. And we'll do the side of our extra fuel tanks as well. Now once we get that exactly like we like it, we're going to go ahead and seal it in after it dries, of course. And this is Model Master's Acrylic Flat Clear. And I mix it up for the airbrush and I spray it. Now we're going to come in with some streaking grime. There's going to be fuel and oil spots on the vehicle. Right now we're paying attention to the fill caps on our auxiliary fuel tanks here. And you may have some running down the side and some spilled over here and there. So just you don't want everything to look exactly the same. Also, these hub seals probably have a little leak in them, so a little bit of oil seepage there. Now you don't want to do every single road wheel, of course. Just one here and one there. And I do seal that in. And now for the final step. So this is, I think, a B5. This is a graphite, artist's graphite refill. But I find that the softer graphite comes off really easy. And we're just going to do the hinge points and the cleats and a little bit on the side of the tracks, just to show some shiny marks, like the vehicle's been out in the field in the mud and he hits a gravel road and down the road he goes. And there we are. So you can see our streaking, weathering, muddy effects, a little bit of rust here and there. You know, when you build your models, the only person that you really have to please, well, is yourself. You know, just do it the way you want it. You only have to make yourself happy. Modeling is something to be enjoyed. And these older kits that lack detail give us an opportunity to make that kit truly ours by a little bit of scratch building and adding extra details and stuff that the kit didn't have. And that way the kit is yours. So I hope you guys liked this build. I really enjoyed it. Now, this kit is not without its shortcomings, but a little bit of creativity. I think it builds up into a really nice kit, and it gives us a chance to explore different things and different methods without too much expense. This is a fairly inexpensive kit. And for those of you that like kits that have everything included in them, those are available too. So with that, guys, it's going to wrap up this video. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you guys for watching, and a special thanks to all my subscribers. And if you're new to the channel and you haven't subscribed but you like the content, go ahead and subscribe. It's free, doesn't cost you anything. And don't forget to hit that notification bell. That way you'll be notified when I post a new video. That way you won't miss any content. And with that, guys, that will wrap this up. So I gotta go find a new project, so I will see you guys in the next video.